Um, for those of you who have read the book, you know at the back there's an appendix for how to lead someone in the baptism in the Holy Spirit. And in our ministry school in the evenings, we teach our second year on Tuesday and Thursday nights. And there was, I think about a month ago, I was teaching on. The calendar said I was supposed to speak on the subject of tongues, but what I wound up doing is coming in with a handout in Spanish uh, on how to lead someone in the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Basically, a Spanish translation of this appendix, and um, point by point, looking at each passage in Acts when the believers were filled with the Holy Spirit, when they spoke in tongues, and how I see that each time they did, there was supernatural utterance. They spoke something, they prophesied, they spoke in tongues. And when it was all over with, the three students that night, um, we, me and the one student who already was filled, we prayed for the older couple. Some they're from the Pucallpa. They're from the jungle. This actually all three of them, this family, and they speak Shipibo, and Spanish is their second language. So we're doing this, and when we're done, we all sit back down. It was fun. There was laughing. There was stuff that sometimes happens. They described to me feelings of bubbling and living waters on the inside of them. And Misael, his name is, he said to me, okay, well, in my nearly 2 years living here in Lima, being in this school, tonight was the most important class I've had so far. I could be saying what he said wrong. It's been a month, and all of us, our brain kind of remembers things more fictitiously than it really happened. So forgive me if I'm getting details wrong or accidentally exaggerating anything. I don't mean to. But he said basically like that night was really important to him. And nobody had ever explained these things to him before. He had never heard anyone explain things this simply to him before about the baptism of the Spirit, about speaking in tongues. Why does it matter? He'd never spoken in tongues before, and somebody recently said, practice speaking in tongues, and that threw him off because he didn't know how, and was glad that I had this class where I talked to him, answered their concerns, and he kind of almost with tears in his eyes. I don't want to exaggerate. I don't want to pretend like it was more melodramatic than it was, but he said, Steve, is your book ever going to be in Spanish? I want to read that book. I want to read your book. Are you going to translate it? Are you going to have it translated? And the answer to that question is yes. But in reality, I have no idea how, because translation is hard work, and I don't want to ask anyone to do it for me as a favor. I want to pay somebody for their hard work, and I've got a GoFundMe page that I'm going to link to. It's a bit outdated. I made it and then I left it alone. I never shared it on Facebook. Where there's costs. There's translating it, having someone do that work, and having an editor. Like one thing about going with a publisher and having a book published that they decided to take you on is they do all that work, right? They put the tens of thousands of dollars into their titles. So I've maintained the rights to the Spanish version, but that means I have to do all this myself. I have to get it translated. I got to get it edited. I got to get the cover done, printing. So if I'm going to print it, there's a possibility that I can get it printed here, but I have to print a minimum of a certain amount of copies in order for the price to be as low as like less than $3 a copy. Years ago, the ministry I was a part of when I first moved here, we translated and printed a book of Dr. Michael Brown's called A Time for Holy Fire, or in Spanish, Tiempo para Fuego Santo. And that was years ago, and we had a deal where it was $2.60 per copy, but we had to print a minimum of 1,500 copies. And as you know, I live here in Peru. It's easier to give away, sell, or whatever Spanish copies of my book if I had it, as opposed to trying to sell English speaking English copies to people where, I don't itinerate. I don't, I'm not on some public speaking junket where I take boxes of my books with me to sell them, but I have a lot more potential for benefiting people and blessing them with a Spanish version of this book. So the people we train in our ministry school are, the majority of them are future leaders, or they are current leaders who've taken time out to come be trained and taught by us, who are church planters. And I want this book to exist in Spanish, to be able to put it in their hands, to send them off to the, back to the jungle with, a box or something that they can give to their disciples, they can give to their other, leaders in their church and stuff. Just as a starting point. I mean, we could do that with all sorts of titles. That's another story. Books are expensive in this culture. The average, church going Peruvian, whatever, will not be reading books like you and I on our Kindles. They might not, they don't have a Kindle. They might have a smartphone. But as far as like a book like this, even if you make it available for like 30 souls or something, that's steep. They'll invest their money wisely on a book they really, really, really want to read, or somebody recommended to them. But most books are not that cheap. They're a lot more. They're like 50, 60 souls, which for you and I in American currency, that's like $20. But it's a lot. Imagine if you were just getting a paperback book of this size, like a typical nonfiction 40,000 word book. You and I think little of paying like $20 for a copy. Imagine if it was $60 or $70. Like that's like what it's like for most of the people I minister to, most of the people in my school, most of the people I'm ministering to. I've given old Kindles away to people and helped them buy books on them for like half the price, in American money. You know how Kindle books are like $9 and stuff. So anyway, I would love your help with that. If you're someone who has read this book, you believe in it, you know what it can do to help people with their misconceptions, their issues on speaking in tongues, baptism in the Spirit, but especially speaking in tongues, then let me know. I will provide a link to these what do you call it, the GoFundMe, and in the link that I'm leaving you, I made this budget based on the idea that just translating it would cost $2,000 if a friend of mine did it. And I've got another ministry partner who basically is able to is going to look into helping me get it done for cheaper than that, so I can invest the money in editing and printing. But we'll see. It's not something I can do on my own, so that's why I'm inviting you to be a part of that. If you want to. Reviews, I could totally use reviews. I say that they're the author's tip jar. If you enjoyed a book, why not let people know? You don't have to write like a long literary critique as though this is going to be read on the radio or something. All you got to do is say, did you like it? Did you hate it? Why? Because that the more that people do that for a book, the more it signals to Amazon or whatever website you're reviewing it on that people are talking about this book, people like this book, and it helps them suggest it to people, like customers who bought this book that you're purchasing also purchased this one, and it gets recommended more and things like that. So it has an effect related to exposure if you want to help that way. But the best thing you can do is tell people about it, let people know, buy a copy for someone, because just that thing where we don't willingly or knowingly go hear something on purpose that we disagree with. It happens through relationship. It doesn't happen from arguing on Facebook and stuff. So I encourage you to buy somebody a copy that would listen to you recommend it. And so the only way this book will have an impact on people is from people like you who helped me with it, people like you who liked it or didn't like it, but agree with it or something and want to spread the word. I don't know of a book that's like it. Of all the speaking in tongues books I've read, they're usually so pro charismatic, and then there's like a chapter talking about the misconceptions people have or the problems and obstacles people have. This book is just those obstacles, and stories and experiences and testimonies sprinkled in as well. So thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for your time. I know the likelihood you made it to the end of this video is very low, according to every time I post a video on YouTube, and I look at the statistics. I know it plummets how many people are sticking through with it the longer it is. But if you made it this far, it's obviously because this has resonated with you, touched a nerve, and or you're a follower, you're a friend, or you're a ministry partner, a monthly supporter, whatever it is, and you wanted to see what I had to say or what I was going to do with this video. And I thank you for your time. God bless you, and fire on your head.